building a better Bay Area for a safe and secure future. This is ABC 7 News.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dion Lim, and welcome to our daily interactive program. It's called Getting Answers. And today, as you may have guessed, it's all about schools. Governor Gavin Newsom laid out some mandates across the board when it comes to public and also private schools. So let's get a quick recap of all of them. First, we'll give you the headlines and then get into each one of them. Safe in-person school based on local health data, mask requirements, physical distancing, other adaptations, also regular testing and dedicated contact tracing, and rigorous distance learning. Now, here is what safe in-person schools based on local health data means. This means schools can physically open for in-person learning when its county has been off the state's monitoring list for 14 consecutive days. All other schools must begin with distance learning. Now, as for masks, this was interesting. All staff and students in 3rd grade and above must wear masks. Students 2nd grade and below are encouraged to wear masks or face shields. Also, staff must maintain 6 feet of distance between each other and students. School days must start with symptom checks, and there must be hand washing stations, sanitation and disinfection protocol. All of this along with quarantine protocols. Also, there will be a requirement to test staff regularly. And the governor also emphasized that the state contact tracers will prioritize schools. Now, back to distance learning. There must be daily live interaction with teachers and other students. Assignments must be equivalent to in-person classes. There needs to be adapted lessons for English language learners and special education students. Also, access to devices and Wi-Fi for all. To help achieve that, the state is opening $5.3 billion, that is billion with a B, dollars to prioritize equity. Whew, I need to take a breather after all of that. Okay, now with all of that being said, let's bring back State Senator Steve Glazer. We had a town hall on this topic yesterday. He did with State School Superintendent Tony Thurmond. Senator Glazer, you may remember, represents part of Contra Costa and Alameda counties. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. I feel like you're on TV more than I am these days.
It's nice to continue this conversation. It's a very important topic.
Indeed it is, and we have a lot to cover, so right away, let's get to it. You know, you had expressed yesterday and also for a time that you had hoped that standards would be set, not guidelines, specifically for each county, and that these school districts, they're feeling like they're in a state of limbo. Did you get the answers that you were hoping for in today's news briefing?
I think the answer would be mostly yes. Our school board members have been struggling on this issue the whole spring. They're not public health experts. They're trying to make tough choices about whether kids can be safe in their schools. And the governor stepping in, as he did today, to make it clear that schools are not islands in the sea. They are surrounded by communities. And what happens in those communities can affect what happens in the schools. So his action today to say that if you are in a community where the virus is running out of control, and that's defined, those schools just can't open. And he has said what we all know, which is in classroom education is the best. That's the best way for our kids to learn. And I'll go further and say that remote learning is a second-class education. It's not what any of us want. But first priority is to kill this virus. And that means that the schools and remote learning is a consequence of our inability right now to kill this virus.
And to piggyback off of what you just said, San Francisco today, there was a press conference with Mayor London Breed, who said we are now here in the city on the state's watch list. So again, it is number one to quell the spread of the virus, make sure we adhere to those masking rules. Let's talk real quickly, because you mentioned this, about the difference between distance learning and in-person learning. The governor stressed that he has 4 children himself, that he is a proponent, of course, of in-person. There is nothing that can be replaced to that same level, but a great amount of money is being dedicated to this distance learning, providing Wi-Fi, connectivity, devices that students need. $5.3 billion, it sounds like a lot. This is going to be quite a challenge in distributing it, and I don't quite know what that is going to entail. Can you shed some insight into this?
Well, the money was allocated by the legislature, by the Senate and the Assembly, to give him the tools to try to deal with the inequities that are just absolutely going to happen with remote learning. Not everybody has access to the internet. No, not everybody has access to a device. People come to the students come to the schools with different challenges that we provide help and support to envelop them and to assist them in learning and being the best that they can be. So that's $5 billion. It's a lot of money. It's probably not going to do what's necessary. And let's just acknowledge again, remote learning is not the best. And we have to hope that we can get out of this and get kids back in the classroom as soon as we can. But the key to that is to tame this virus. We have to do what's necessary to close it down, and we haven't. Listen, that's the underlying problem, that the schools, what's happening in the schools is a consequence. This virus is out of control in many parts of California. It's overrunning hospitals in different parts of California. And here in the Bay Area, we haven't had it so bad, but the infection rate is going up. It's not going down. And what the governor said today is that if a community in which that school exists by county, if the infection rate is going down 14 straight days, he would allow them the potential to have in-person education. But it's still fundamentally about a virus in our community and our inability to suppress it and to get rid of it so we don't have problems in our businesses, for our employment, and for our kids in school.
We'll speak about the spread again in just a moment, but I do want to ask you about your 19 schools that are in your district. I know it's only been a matter of hours since we heard about these new mandates and the guidelines. What have you heard from members of your school districts and their own response of how to tackle this? Oftentimes, we hear that the school districts feel unprepared, that this has come too late. They wish they had some guidance earlier in the summer to better prepare for this fall.
Well, there's been heated conversations, heated school board meetings over the last week or so. The school board members have been put in an awful spot, from parents who want their kids back in school, who don't fear the virus, who believe falsely that kids can't get it and it's not really a problem, to those who feel like if all they offer is in person, I don't feel safe sending my kid to school. And they have waited a long time. I think the governor should have acted sooner, but I appreciate that he acted today and decisively today, and make it clear that remote learning is going to be the requirement if the virus is running rampant in your community. In my district, in Contra Costa and Alameda County, most of the school districts that have made a decision decided that public health said we have to have remote learning. There are a few that were waiting. There were a few that had big debates and then decided to defer for a little more time. And so I think that's now going to resolve the conflict that they were facing, parents against parents, and now we're going to have to make the best of it. And that's not going to be easy.
It sounds like there is a need for a call for unity on this, especially given some of the pushback I've also seen on social media in other avenues about wearing a mask, something as simple. I know we only have a couple more minutes left, but you did want to address that importance as well and send that strong message.
Well, the governor did provide guidance that if you're third grade or older, you have to wear a mask, but under that, you don't. If you can, he would prefer that you do, but if the kids aren't able to, that you don't. But listen, it is the one way. It's the no cost to wearing a mask. It's just making sure that the virus doesn't spread. The danger behind this COVID-19 is that almost half the people who have it don't know that they have it. They don't have the symptoms. And that means they're walking around, and yet they can infect people as if they had the raging flu, per se. So it's a very insidious virus, and it means that masking protects them from you and you from them. And it's a simple thing. We just have to do it, folks. I know I was walking around today in my community, and people were wearing masks for the most part, but there were others that weren't and weren't being careful. And for those of you who are over 65 or have any kind of a compromised immune system, it's dangerous for you to be out because the consequences are deadly. So we really have to, we don't have a full shelter in place right now. Some would suggest we should, but we really shouldn't be out unless it's very much an essential activity.
A clear and strong message from Senator Steve Glazer. Many thanks to you for joining us once again. I'm sure we'll talk with you once again later on as this continues to evolve. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now when we come back, a state assembly member who actually does not agree with what Governor Gavin Newsom is doing. A quick reminder as well that we are taking a break on the air, but the conversation continues on our live streams, and that includes on Facebook Live. That is happening as we speak. Stay with us. We'll be right back on air. Okay, everybody, we are in break. Just to give you an idea of what it is like, we are filling the commercial space that is over the air with going through some of your comments. And please feel free to message me. I am facebook.com/DionLimTV directly. That is my page. Or going to the ABC 7 News Facebook page as well, where we are gathering some of your questions. Obviously, this is such a polarizing issue. It's been quite a morning. Starting off with, at 11:30, Mayor London Breed of San Francisco sending that very strong message, not mincing words, at the importance of wearing masks and stopping the spread of coronavirus. Now that we are on the state's watch list, joining so many more counties, so many more cities. On your screen right now, getting answers to the reopening of schools, something that Governor Newsom addressed in a rather lengthy press briefing today. Oh, it looks like we have our guest, just so you can see some of the behind-the-scenes workings. Assemblyman Kevin Kiley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, where are you coming to us from? Is that your home back there?
Yeah, so I live here in Rockland, California. I represent a district. It's a little east of Sacramento.
East of Sacramento, got it. Our producer is speaking to me in my ear. I'm sorry about that. I couldn't hear that.
Oh, I represent a district a little east of Sacramento.
Oh, this is great. Okay. Kevin, real quick reminder, we happen to be live on Facebook as we speak, so no picking your nose, keep that in mind, things like that. But also, we are taking some comments and questions from Facebook at facebook.com/ABC7News. And as I go through some of these, we already have more than 750 people watching live, and that number continues to climb. We've reached about 16,000 people. As I click on some of this, Karen wants to know about at-risk children, those with special needs. Karen, I will try and get to you and that question in this next segment. Here we go. We're back on air. 3, 2. Welcome back, everybody. We are hearing lots of reaction to Governor Newsom's mandates for reopening schools. But we should point out, as you can imagine, not everyone is on board, and that includes Assembly Member Kevin Kiley. He joins us this afternoon. He serves the 6th District, which is the northern and eastern Sacramento suburbs. Many thanks to you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You know, you have been critical of Governor Newsom's stance for quite some time, and you released a statement today that I want to read a portion of, because you cited the California Constitution here, saying that education is a fundamental right of each child in California. But this must mean that you don't consider in-home learning, distance learning, as part of that fundamental right.
Oh, no, quite the contrary. I've been among the foremost advocates in our legislature for parents to have the option of distance learning even before the pandemic. But that's exactly the point, is there needs to be that option. And parents need to be able to make the decision that's right for their family. And unfortunately, with today's order, the governor has eliminated that option for the vast majority of families in the state.
You know, the numbers of coronavirus spreading in our state have been eye-opening, to say the least. San Francisco Mayor London Breed spoke about the explosion that we've seen that has now landed us on the state's watch list for the number of cases. You know, you have said that the student safety, and that there's growing evidence that suggests that these school closures do little to flatten the epidemic curve. Can you elaborate a little bit more about what you mean?
Sure. Well, I mean, what we know for sure is that the virus poses a fairly minimal risk to kids. It's not zero risk, but it's about on par with, riding on a school bus or playing on monkey bars. Where, on the other hand, we know there are substantial risks to extended periods of isolation, which the American Academy of Pediatrics and others have highlighted, such as, mental health issues, issues of abuse, and so forth. So if that is the balance that we're striking, and that's not even considering the enormous effects of learning loss, then the risk seems to weigh in favor of having the in-classroom option. Now, of course, there is also the issue of students spreading the virus. But that's where I refer to the growing body of evidence that has done studies looking at countries that shut down schools versus those that didn't, and looking at the extent to which young people serve as vectors for the disease. And there is growing evidence that that we're not actually necessarily doing a whole lot of good by shutting schools down. So that's sort of my outlook, is when you have very concrete and certain harms from shutting down schools, and the weight of the evidence suggests you don't have a great benefit for it, then at that point, we ought to leave it in the hands of families to decide what's right for them.
I do have to play devil's advocate for a moment here, because if you could cite some of these sources, that would be beneficial, because I think in the news we have talked about the transmission from kids to adults that has been at the forefront when talking about bringing kids back in Israel. I know that there is an outbreak right now after they have reopened schools. Granted, you cannot speak specifically to the cases in Israel, but does that not play a role because the evidence certainly seems to be there that there has been an outbreak in that country. Are you afraid of that happening in California?
Sure. Well, so the Israeli situation I have some familiarity with, and it seemed to be kind of an unusual situation there. But there have been a number of very leading institutional researchers who have come out with studies. There was one looking, I believe, at Norway versus Sweden, the different paths they took, that have said that that this doesn't really seem to bend the epidemic curve much. That's not to say that closing schools will have no impact. I mean, I'm sure that it will help to some extent, but you have to strike some sort of balance. And at this point, when we're saying we're just going to shut all of the schools down, not give any parents the option of any in-classroom instruction, no hybrid models, even though we know the harms of doing that are so severe, I don't think that's a wise decision. And unfortunately, the way that this process has unfolded, it's really been driven by special interest groups in politics a lot more than it's been driven by science and the evidence.
Now, when it comes to that balanced approach, to see the governor support the districts that want to stay open for in-person learning, but understandably wanting to keep kids safe, let's also talk about the adjustment period, because he also mentioned that this does not necessarily need to be forever, that there is an option for in-person learning on the table, but there has to be those guidelines, the number of cases, if it's below a certain amount of students or staff or other faculty. Does that serve as something that you agree with?
I do, yeah. I think that, when we have schools that are offering in-classroom instruction, of course there need to be accommodations made. Of course we need to make sure that there's personal protective equipment that's being used, and we need to have to be mindful of how many students we have in any given classroom, and we need to protect vulnerable student populations and teachers who are part of vulnerable populations. That's all just common sense. But to say that we're the only remedy, or the only thing that's going to advance student safety is just eliminating the in-classroom option for 80% of the state, that is not actually what's in the best interest of students as far as their safety or their learning. It's extremely likely that there will be a lot more harm done to kids from the things that the American Academy of Pediatrics has cited, like the mental health issues, suicidal ideations, susceptibility to abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, all of these things that there's a greater risk of when you have extended periods of isolation. I think we can be certain that the harm of that is going to outweigh the harm to any kids from COVID-19, because at this point we haven't, and thank God for this, we haven't had a single COVID-19 death for a child under the age of 18 in California.
All right, Assemblyman Kevin Kiley, thank you for spending part of your afternoon with us. We will try and have you on Facebook Live, which is going on right now, where you can ask your questions as part of our interactive show. Kevin, many thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right, certainly we have talked a lot about schools, but other big news today involves San Francisco now on the state's watch list. ABC 7 News contributor Phil Mateer joins us in just a couple moments to talk about this next. Stay with us. All right, now, okay, great. Kevin, it looks like we have about another minute where we can, okay, never mind, we just lost him. For all of you who are watching us, Okay, he turned his camera off. Okay, so now for everyone who is watching on Facebook, you can see the inner workings of how this operates. I'm managing not only the Facebook Live questions, but also trying to juggle the newscast and also the 3 guests that we have for you. So we're trying to get you some answers. One person wrote in to ask about how this distance learning is going to affect those students with special needs, which is a very valid question. I'm actually the Bay Area's Champion of the Year for Best Buddies, working a lot with those with autism. So that, of course, is something that I'm personally... Okay, Douglas, and I think you and Eric are speaking. Eric? Sorry, what is it that you'll play? Oh, great. Okay, great. All right, Phil, hi, can you hear me?
I hear you clear.
Okay, fantastic. Lots of questions. I'm just, don't mind me, I'm culling through some of these.
You know, Dion, everybody is. Everybody has questions. Even the governor had questions, and he was supposed to have answers. So don't feel lonely. All
well,
right?
we should address that once we get back on the air. I know we're on commercial break, but it was an awful lot to digest, wasn't it, Phil?
It was, and so I think we should be talking about that. The San Francisco story is one thing, but I think that what really affects a lot of people is the entire question of schools and this toggle switch, which is now going back and forth, and it really is creating a jerky reaction in the community.
Great. We're just a few seconds away, Phil. We'll get to you in just a moment, and we'll talk about both. Here we go. All right, once again, thank you for staying with us. It was not just Governor Newsom making headlines today, because San Francisco announced it is now on the state's watch list. If they are on for 3 consecutive days, additional businesses must close, and that includes indoor malls, non-essential offices, and that would start on Monday. Let's get with some of these mandates that came down from Governor Newsom. And joining me now to break all of it down is ABC 7 News contributor Phil Matier. Boy, Phil, we talked about this in the commercial break. Lots to get to. I don't even know where to start.
Well, let's start with it being a mandate rather than a recommendation. That is a step. In the past, we've had the governor recommend this, recommend that, urge this, urge that, set up guidelines and goalposts and different things like that. This is a mandate. Now, also, let's realize that in the Bay Area in particular, it was looking more and more like schools were not going to physically open their doors and the students come in. District after district was saying the way it was set up, between the money and the Herculean effort it would take to prepare the schools, they weren't ready for it anyway. But it is very difficult for parents, because what we saw today is the first step in what continues to be a very confusing path forward. And that is, even if the school opens, it could close again. What is the certainty we are looking at in the weeks and months to come, not only for the children's learning, but for the parents having to take care of them and juggle their work as well?
Phil, I can only imagine it's going to take a tremendous amount of manpower in order to monitor all of these mandates. For example, when you can once again reopen, the number of cases, the percentage of cases, and all of these mandates. You know, how realistically prepared are schools to adhere to all of these things, especially so close to the school year starting?
Well, let's take it another step as well. What about the testing for teachers and staff? What about temperature taking coming in? What about the mask issue? And the cleaning, nightly cleaning, daily cleaning. Yes, all of those things were being attempted to be addressed by school districts already, and a lot of them were coming up short, both financially, because they don't have the money, even though the state says it's going to be getting it to them. They haven't gotten it yet. So there's a question about the money. How do you pay for all this? So, Deanna, it was going to be a herky-jerky start, maybe a hybrid, maybe some coming in, some coming out. Yes, it's still out there, and possibly this is going to buy everybody some time to try to get the schools together for when they do open the doors, because I'm not sure they were ready to in the next next couple of weeks.
Yeah, our very own Amy Hollyfield this morning was live in Orinda, where she spoke to educators who said they were not feeling very prepared and that they were hoping for those concrete, firm guidelines. Something else that was brought up was the need for safety to stop the spread. Also something that was echoed by Mayor London Breed. I know you're here to also speak about that as well. What were your reactions when you listened to her press briefing today? A very strong message from her.
Well, it was sort of like, here we go again. It was deja vu all over again. We've got to mask. We've got to do this. We've got to avoid congregation. We've got to basically behave. And we're still in a much of a rough and tumble situation with this. We thought San Francisco was out of the woods. But, you know, San Francisco and Alameda County have been playing it safe and conservative all along. So I wasn't all that surprised with what the mayor said, but again, it goes back to if you're a business person and you're opened your store, you got your inventory back, what do you do if it's shutdown time again? You're going to have to face that. And again, it's the uncertainty. And one thing business does not do well in is uncertain times. They want to know if it's going to be this way or that way. But this is going to continue to be a tumbling situation.
Mm-hmm. And personally, on a personal level, what have you seen? What would you like to see the steps being taken in San Francisco and in the Bay Area in order to move forward?
Well, it's going to sound a little wonky and maybe like a Boy Scout, but how about everybody wear the mask, everybody wash, and everybody minimize mixing? How about we just start with something basic like that and keep it going for an extended period of time? I still walk down the streets and people have their masks on, but they're down on their chin. I still walk into stores and, you know, people are close and you still see them congregating. It's still going on. You want people to take it seriously. Otherwise, we're just going to have this fallback. I would also like to get some clarity, you know, from the state and the locals in terms of testing. Do we test? How do we test? Where do we test? And for how long good are the tests? All of those things are in there, but a lot of that's going over people's heads. They're just waking up, turning on ABC 7 in the morning and finding out what's open, what's closed, and what's going on that day, kind of like the weather.
Certainly many people's heads are spinning. You are not the only one. Phil, as always, a pleasure having you on. Thank you for being here.
All right.
Now, a reminder, you can read Phil's column in the Chronicle every Sunday and Wednesday. Stay with us. We'll be right back on air, but we are also live on Facebook.com. Okay, for all of you who are joining us on Facebook.com/ABC7News, we do want to get some sound right now. This is from Dr. Linda Darling-Hammond, the president of the State Board of Education. She addressed special needs learning and what that will look like come this fall. Let's take a listen.
All of the districts have been aware that they need to have capacity for distance learning and begin to adapt what they're doing for students with special needs. We will have standards and guidance, further standards and guidance coming out over the coming week. But in the meanwhile, a lot of the districts and county offices have been developing resources, many of them targeted for students with special education needs, curriculum, and plans for how teachers will be able to do one-on-one as well as small group instruction, whether it's in person or online. There's been a lot of training happening this summer, and many teachers are learning how to, both getting the time put in their schedule and learning how to use the breakout room in Zoom so that a small group can meet with them, including students who need one-on-one attention. The paraprofessionals sometimes can be one-on-one in that Zoom breakout room and in other contexts to work directly with students in the ways that they need to receive services. So I think we're going to see a lot more capacity this school year than we were able to have in all districts last school year to really respond to both classrooms as a whole and the needs of particular students. And of course, as the governor said, we want to get people back to school in person.
Dr. Linda Darling-Hammond, president of State Board of Education, addressing students with special needs, something that many of you have been asking about on Facebook. Once again, thank you so much for joining us on this interactive show, Getting Answers. Now, earlier today, we heard opposing views to Governor Newsom's mandates, and we certainly heard a lot from you on our live streams. Unfortunately, we can't get to all of them, but as we wrap up this afternoon, we do want to give you the main headlines of what was covered in Governor Newsom's reopening of schools plan. You can see them on your screen. This includes that safe in-person school based on local health data. That will change depending on where you are. There are mask requirements, requiring a mask for everyone who is in 3rd grade or above. Physical distancing guidelines, also regular testing and dedicated contact tracing and rigorous distance learning. We do want to remind you we are here every day at 3 p.m. on air and also streaming live on Facebook. We'll see you right back here at 4. Okay, to everyone on Facebook, thank you so much for tuning in. We apologize for not being able to get to all of your questions. There is an astronomical amount coming in minute by minute. It's a lot to juggle, but we really do appreciate you weighing in. We will see you tomorrow on ABC 7 News at 3 for our interactive show. I'm about to go get ready for the ABC 7 News at 4 newscast. Thanks so much. Cheers.